Don't you dare tell me this was for my own good, Daniel, because I almost signed away my life this morning. I heard my own voice in my head before I ever said the words aloud, standing beneath the cold fluorescent lights of First Franklin Bank with a pen still pressed between my fingers. The woman across from me, Megan Foster, had stopped smiling. She turned her computer monitor slightly, as though shielding something from the customers waiting 20 feet behind me. Mrs. Whitmore, she said carefully, this document doesn't update an emergency contact. It authorizes your son to control an investment account worth a little over $600,000. For a moment, all I could hear was the soft hum of the air conditioning. Daniel had driven 32 miles that morning to bring me those papers. He had kissed my cheek in the driveway, carried in my groceries, and told me the bank needed one simple signature because Arthur's estate was still being cleaned up. Arthur had been gone 8 months. A heart condition, the doctors said. Ordinary. Final. Nothing mysterious about it. And yet, ever since his funeral, strange little things had happened inside our Ohio house. His old desk lamp sometimes clicked on by itself after midnight. The grandfather clock in the hallway, broken for nearly 2 years, had chimed once at 2:17 a.m. 3 nights in a row. I told myself old houses settle. Old wiring misbehaves. Grief makes patterns where there are none. But the night before I went to the bank, my phone had recorded something I was never meant to hear. I had been trying out the call recording feature Daniel had shown me because he said I kept forgetting appointments and details from our conversations. I thought I had ended the call, but I had only minimized the screen. The line stayed open, and the recording kept running without me realizing it. I heard Melissa's voice first, faint but unmistakable. She can never know what happens after she signs. Then there was a pause. A chair scraped. Daniel said something too muffled to understand. I stopped the recording right there. I was afraid to hear more. At the bank, Megan slid the papers back toward me. Do you want me to cancel the authorization request? She asked. I stared at Daniel's signature on the lower page and felt something inside me go very still. Not yet, I said. Tell him there was a system problem. When I got home, the house felt colder than the 72 degrees showing on the thermostat. Daniel called twice. I let it ring. At 9:14 that night, I locked my bedroom door, put in my earphones, and opened the recording again. Arthur's desk lamp in the room across the hall flickered once, then twice. I pressed play. Melissa's voice came through first, then Daniel's, low and strained. Melissa, this was never supposed to involve my mother. And beneath his words, so faint I nearly missed it, another sound seemed to rise from the recording. A man's voice. Older. Familiar. Saying my name. I pulled one earbud out so fast it caught in my hair. The room was silent. Arthur's desk lamp across the hall had gone dark again, and for several seconds I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the open doorway, wondering whether grief had finally taught my mind how to imitate his voice. I put the earbud back in and replayed the last 6 seconds. Daniel's words came through clearly. Melissa, this was never supposed to involve my mother. Then static. A soft breath. And something that sounded like, Evelyn. Arthur used to say my name that way when he wanted me to stop worrying. I played it again. The sound was still there, but weaker somehow, buried beneath the hum of the recording. I told myself it was interference. A television in Daniel's house. A voice from the street. Anything ordinary. Then Melissa spoke. It already involves her. The account is in her name, Daniel. We have until Friday. Daniel answered, but he had moved farther from the phone. I caught only pieces. Dad's account. Then, Robert. And finally, don't let her call the attorney. After that came 37 seconds of muffled sound I could not understand. I wrote every word down on the back of an electric bill and stared at it until nearly midnight. Robert. There was only one Robert connected to Arthur's finances that I knew of. Robert Hale had helped my husband arrange our retirement accounts more than a decade earlier. I had not spoken to him since Arthur's memorial service. The next morning, instead of calling Daniel, I drove 9 miles to the office of Claire Bennett, an estate attorney recommended by my neighbor, Susan Miller. Claire was 48, with silver-framed glasses and the calm manner of someone who had learned not to react too quickly to family secrets. I showed her the bank papers first. She read them twice. Mrs. Whitmore, this would give Daniel broad authority over the investment account. Not temporary authority. Not emergency authority. She tapped the figure on the second page. $640,218 as of the last statement. My stomach tightened. Daniel had never told me the exact amount. Claire asked who prepared the document. I said Daniel claimed the bank did. She turned the final page toward me. In tiny print near the bottom was a digital file reference. The bank didn't create this, she said. By lunchtime, Claire had traced the document metadata to Ethan Cole, a financial consultant in Dublin, Ohio, someone I had never met. Melissa had. Arthur had saved 2 forwarded appointment confirmations from Ethan Cole's office after they were mistakenly sent to an old family email account he still monitored. Melissa's name appeared on both. Before I could ask what that meant, Claire opened another file and frowned. There's something else. A transfer instruction had already been drafted from my account. Not $640,000. Not yet. The amount was $185,000, scheduled for Friday morning. I felt the blood drain from my face. Then Claire looked at the destination line and quietly said, "Evelyn, this money isn't going to Daniel." The destination was a company called Blackstone Ridge Holdings, LLC, registered to an office park outside Columbus. I had never heard the name, but Claire had. She turned her screen toward me and showed me a property filing connected to a rental development nearly 40 miles from my house. Daniel and Melissa had invested in it 11 months earlier. The project had stalled, and according to the documents Claire found, they were facing a deadline on a $185,000 obligation. Suddenly, the number on my transfer instruction made sense. What did not make sense was why Daniel had told me nothing. I drove home in a cold rain, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. At 4:30 that afternoon, Melissa called. Her voice was sweet, almost cheerful. She asked whether the bank had fixed its little computer problem. I said they were still working on it. There was a pause just long enough for me to notice. Then she told me not to worry and said one of them would bring new papers the next morning. That night, the strange things in the house became harder to dismiss. Arthur's grandfather clock, the one that had not worked in years, struck twice at exactly 2:17 a.m. I stood in the hallway staring at its motionless hands. They still pointed to 10:42. Then the lamp on Arthur's desk clicked on. I walked into his study and found nothing disturbed, except one thing. His old leather address book lay open beside the lamp. I was certain I had left it inside the bottom drawer. The page facing me contained Robert Hale's name. Under it, in Arthur's handwriting, were 4 words, "Call if they push." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. Arthur had written notes like that all his life, little reminders without dates, but I had never seen those words before. I reached for my phone to photograph the page. Before I could, headlights swept across the front window. Daniel's car pulled into my driveway. It was nearly 2:30 in the morning. He knocked softly, then harder. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted. No Melissa, no briefcase. "Mom, whatever Melissa brings you later this morning, don't sign it." I stared at him. "You brought me the first papers." His eyes dropped. "I know." I asked him about Blackstone Ridge. His face changed immediately. He admitted the investment had gone bad. He admitted he had agreed to use some of my money because Melissa convinced him they could replace it before I noticed. Hearing my own son say those words hurt more than discovering the transfer. But then he said something worse. It was supposed to be $185,000. That was all. I remembered the document at the bank granting control over the entire $640,218 account. Then why does Melissa want everything? Daniel looked toward Arthur's dark study. At that exact moment, the desk lamp snapped off by itself. Daniel went pale. "Because she found something after Dad died," he said. "Something he left behind. And if you see it, Mom, you'll know he was afraid this would happen." Daniel would not tell me what Melissa had found until morning. He kept saying he needed proof before he accused his wife of anything more. And for the first time in my life, I saw my son not as a boy who had disappointed me, but as a grown man terrified of the choices he had already made. At 9 the next morning, Claire Bennett drove us to Robert Hale's office in Westerville. Robert was 63, careful with his words, and visibly shaken when I placed Arthur's address book on his desk. He stared at the sentence beneath his own name. "Call if they push." Then he looked at me. "Evelyn, Arthur wrote that after our last private meeting." My chest tightened. Robert opened an archived folder on his computer. 7 months before Arthur died, he had asked Robert to prepare additional protections around my investment account. He had become concerned after overhearing Melissa pressure Daniel about using family assets for the Blackstone Ridge project. Arthur had not accused them of theft. Not then. He had simply said he wanted safeguards in case I was ever pressured into signing something I did not understand. There was a written safeguard instruction, Robert said. An original copy. I asked where it was. His answer made Daniel close his eyes. 3 weeks after Arthur's funeral, Melissa had come to Robert's office claiming she was collecting duplicate estate records for me. A temporary receptionist had allowed her to review an older paper file before Robert realized what was happening. When he checked afterward, Arthur's signed instruction was gone. Daniel whispered, "That's what she has." But Robert shook his head. "That's what she thinks matters." On the drive over, I had finally told Claire about the broken grandfather clock chiming at 2:17 and about seeing the same number more than once in Arthur's things. Before Robert could explain further, Claire leaned toward him. "Evelyn keeps seeing 2:17. Does that number mean anything to you?" Robert froze. Then he pulled up an old email from Arthur. The subject line contained only 4 digits, 0217. Arthur had used numbers to organize private notes for years. Robert explained that 0217 referred to a storage reference, not a time. Suddenly, the grandfather clock felt different to me. Maybe I had noticed 217 because grief had made the number meaningful after the fact. Maybe the lamp was old wiring. Maybe the address book had slipped from the drawer days earlier and I had forgotten. The thought should have comforted me. It did not. Because when Claire searched Arthur's archive correspondence for 0217, she found a scanned copy of Arthur's safeguard instruction that Melissa apparently never knew existed. Most of it was legal language I could barely follow. One sentence stood out. "Any attempted transfer arising under coercion shall be independently reviewed." Robert stopped me before I could read further. "The important part isn't here," he said. Arthur separated the final instruction. Then Claire opened the audio file from my phone. Her technician had cleaned up several seconds we had thought were only static. Daniel's voice emerged first, low and strained. "If Mom finds out Dad already knew." Then Melissa answered, perfectly clear. "Then we lose everything." A third sound followed. Not Arthur's voice this time. A digital chime. Daniel looked at me and went white. "Mom," he said, "that chime came from Dad's old safe." "That safe was never empty," Daniel said. And suddenly every strange thing in my house felt less like grief and more like a warning I had been too afraid to understand. He admitted that 3 weeks after Arthur's funeral, Melissa had persuaded him to remove a small digital document safe from Arthur's study. She told him it contained old tax records and outdated insurance papers. Daniel carried it to their garage. He never opened it. Melissa did. The chime on my recording was the sound that safe made when its keypad accepted the correct code. My hands went cold. How did she know the combination? I asked. Daniel looked at Robert. Robert looked back at me. 0217, he said. The number I had seen in Arthur's archived email. The number my broken grandfather clock seemed to give me night after night. Robert explained that Arthur used 0217 as a private storage reference because February 17th was the date he created the first protection plan for me. It had also become the safe code. Coincidence, Claire would later call it. Maybe it was. But in that moment, I could almost feel Arthur standing beside me, insisting I keep looking. We drove straight to Daniel's house. Melissa was gone. The garage safe was still there, tucked behind 2 boxes of Christmas decorations. Daniel entered 0217. The keypad chimed exactly like the sound buried in my recording. Inside was almost nothing. 1 empty folder, 1 flash drive, and a handwritten note from Arthur. Paper can disappear. Records cannot. Claire plugged the drive into an offline laptop. The files changed everything. Arthur had scanned the missing instruction himself. He had also saved emails showing that months before his death, Melissa had asked Daniel whether my investment account could be used to rescue Blackstone Ridge. Daniel had answered yes. He had been part of it from the beginning. Not the whole plan, but enough. I looked at my son. He did not deny it. I thought we would borrow the $185,000 and put it back, he said. Then Melissa found Dad's safeguard instruction. She panicked. She said if we controlled the entire account first, we could move the money before anyone reviewed it. Claire kept reading. Then she stopped. Arthur had done something Melissa never discovered. The paper in the safe was not the enforceable safeguard itself. It was only Arthur's copy of the instruction. The actual account restriction had already been filed with the investment institution. Any attempt to transfer full control within 18 months of Arthur's death required independent verification from me. If coercion was suspected, the account would be frozen and audited. Melissa had stolen a document she thought she could destroy, never realizing the safeguard was already active. By late afternoon, Claire had blocked Friday's $185,000 transfer. The money was safe, but I was not finished. I asked her to arrange a meeting for the next morning. Melissa arrived believing I still knew almost nothing. She sat across from me, crossed her legs, and smiled. I placed my phone between us. "Before you explain why you needed my signature," I said, "there's something you forgot was listening." Then I pressed play, and Melissa's smile vanished before the first sentence was over. Melissa tried to stop the recording after 12 seconds. Claire reached across the table and calmly moved my phone out of her hand. No one raised a voice. That made it worse. The room filled with Daniel's words, Melissa's instructions, the safe's digital chime, and finally that faint older voice saying my name. Melissa's face changed. Daniel stared at the floor. When the audio ended, Claire placed copies of Arthur's filed safeguard instruction and the account restriction beside the blocked $185,000 transfer request. "The account is secure," she said, "and any future attempt to move funds without Mrs. Whitmore's direct authorization will be reviewed." Melissa began explaining. She said Blackstone Ridge was supposed to recover. She said they never intended to take everything permanently. She said Daniel had agreed. That last part was true, and Daniel did not hide from it anymore. "I agreed to take the $185,000, he said. "I told myself it was borrowing. I knew better. I looked at my son and realized there are moments when love does not disappear, but trust does. Quietly. Completely. Then I asked the question that had followed me since the first night. Whose voice is at the end?" Daniel lifted his head. His eyes filled, but his answer was steady. The night of the phone call, Melissa had opened the files copied from Arthur's safe. One of them was an audio recording. She played only a few seconds before shutting it off because Daniel was still arguing with her. My phone, still connected, captured part of it through the room. Claire opened the flash drive again. There it was. A file dated 7 months before Arthur died. Robert confirmed Arthur had made it after establishing my account protections. Claire pressed play. My husband's voice filled the office, clear this time. "Evelyn, if you ever hear this, it means someone has made you doubt your own judgment. Don't. You were the strongest person in this family long before any of us noticed." I stopped breathing for a second. The lamp, the clock, the address book. Not all of them needed to be ghosts. An electrician later found a failing switch in Arthur's desk lamp. I remembered moving his address book while searching for tax receipts, then forgetting I had done it. The grandfather clock was harder to explain. A repairman told me its damaged electronic chime module could trigger without the hands moving, but he could not tell me why it had sounded at 2:17 on 3 separate nights. Maybe I had noticed the time because grief had taught me to search for patterns. Maybe coincidence had simply landed on the one number Arthur had chosen years earlier. I never decided which explanation I believed. What mattered was that the voice on my phone was real. Arthur had left it behind. Daniel and Melissa faced the financial consequences of Blackstone Ridge without my money. I changed every password, removed Daniel's access, and placed the account under independent oversight. I did not tell my son I forgave him. I told him forgiveness, if it came, would have to grow from what he did next. Weeks later, I sat alone at our kitchen table with Arthur's old coffee mug beside mine. I listened to his message one final time, then stored it safely and deleted the accidental recording from my phone after Claire preserved the legal copy. Outside, evening settled over Ohio. For 8 months, I had believed protecting Arthur's money was the last duty of my marriage. I finally understood that Arthur had protected it for one reason only, so I would remember that the life still ahead of me belonged to me.